Welcome back to the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, here for the Smackdown summary, third of three parts of this week's edition, and want to jump right into Smackdown Live and what unfolded this past week. I'm flying solo here without co-host Sean Saputo enjoying his Memorial Day weekend. Nonetheless, Sean likely will be back next week, and we're hoping to have a special guest as well on the podcast, a wrestling celebrity to an extent here in the Pittsburgh area. But let's talk about what happened on Friday night. Friday night I got the SmackDown potential change on my mind with the news coming out that SmackDown purchased for $1 billion by Fox, and rumors that it could be moving to Friday night. Still on Tuesdays now, don't worry. Nothing has changed, and nothing will likely change at least for another year plus. But Tuesday night SmackDown, the first thing that jumped out was the women's qualifying matches. Two spots had already been solidified for the Money in the Bank match on the SmackDown side with Charlotte as well as Becky Lynch. Two more to be filled, and those were both filled this past week. And the first one, somewhat surprisingly, went to Lana. Lana has done very little in terms of her in-ring work on the main roster. She had a bit of a run almost about a year ago at this point. Didn't really work out. She got a couple title matches undeservedly for the most part. Sort of just got thrust into them. Never really showed that she had improved enough to be a legitimate contender on the women's side. Certainly she's very popular, great looking, and gets a great reaction. But her in-ring work has always been suspect. That's been a criticism for quite some time with her. And I don't know that a lot has changed. We didn't really get to see very much because she defeated Billie Kay in short order, in which Aiden English, who was in Lana's corner, posed a bit of a distraction. Peyton Royce, Billie Kay were distraught at ringside with Aiden walking around with the Lana Day sign. And as Billie Kay returned to the ring, she basically walked right into a X Factor of sorts from Lana, as Lana got the quick victory. So now she is the third participant representing SmackDown Live in the Money in the Bank ladder match, again joining Charlotte and Becky Lynch, two very impressive, credible in-ring tacticians. Now you throw Lana into the mix. She'll get a reaction, but I'm not sure that she's really built to have success in a match of this magnitude. Again, very limited in terms of what she's shown in the ring. And now you not only put her in a marquee match, but you put her in a match with ladders involved. And you have to wonder what type of spot she's going to be able to have in a match like this. Will she be able to do any of the dangerous or high-flying spots? I don't think so. Maybe she'll be on the receiving end of someone jumping off of a ladder onto her or something along those lines. But to me, sort of a peculiar decision to put her into the match. And it becomes even more perplexing when you look at the other women that are in here. Because Lana, at this point, is a face. It's sort of been a natural, unsolicited transition from heel to face for both Rusev and Lana. Lana really following in the footsteps of Rusev because he became so popular. She's his wife and his supporter that she naturally sort of becomes a face with him. Well, now you look at Charlotte, a face on SmackDown, Becky Lynch, a face on SmackDown, Lana, a face on SmackDown, and then the fourth qualifier, we found out this past week, Naomi, as she defeated Sonya Deville, as Sonya Deville got a second opportunity to qualify for the match. First time she came up short in a triple threat along with her partner Mandy Rose, as they could not knock off Becky Lynch, and now Sonya gets chance number 2 and loss number 2, as Naomi, as you can see, got the roll-up victory. So Naomi in the match, she certainly deserves to be in there, and she certainly can bring a lot to the table with her athleticism. She's built for a match like this. Her ability to do some high-flying stuff, some risk-taking on her behalf will probably create some pretty impressive and pretty memorable spots in this match. Naomi, a great fit for the Money in the Bank ladder match, but she's a face. So you have all 4 of your representatives from SmackDown Live being the good guys, with Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and now Lana and Naomi. And you look over on Monday Night Raw, and you have some faces in the match there as well. Ember Moon, most recently Natalya, who, if you go listen to what I said on the Raw recap, I think that she's only a face. She's the facade of a face right now, who probably will become a heel whenever she cashes in, if she is fortunate enough to win this. But as of now, at least, you treat her as a face. Alexa Bliss is, of the 7 who have already qualified, the only heel in this match. So a lot of pressure on her. And it's an interesting dynamic, because I think these types of matches are really set up for the heels to win. When you have that Money in the Bank briefcase, it is really, for the most part, geared towards a heel. The cash-in is sort of something that typically you do at an unexpected moment. We saw a great example with Carmella this year and how she handled it. And remember who won the guys' Money in the Bank briefcase? It was Baron Corbin. So, I mean, you look at the people who get these opportunities, generally with the Money in the Bank briefcase, it is a heel. So I'm not sure what the thought process is, especially on the SmackDown side with all the faces getting in. Think of the superstars who have been left out, however, on SmackDown. You have Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, the Iconics, who are just trying to get their footing here on SmackDown. It really would have done wonders, I think, for one of them, or particularly both of them, to be in this match to show their ability, because they really haven't shown too much yet to the fans on the main roster. They had a nice run in NXT, nothing, not really a outstanding run, I would say, but they showed enough that they're pretty good characters. They can get it done at an adequate level in the ring. I think that one of them, if not both of them, would have been a nice addition to this match, because it elevates them. They get to be in the spotlight, but not to be. And 2 other women who play the heels over on SmackDown, who recently came over as well. They're still trying to establish themselves. Sonya Deville, we mentioned she lost 2 qualifying matches, along with Mandy Rose. I think you look at those 4 women, Sonya, to me, is a future champion. Mandy Rose, certainly the company's behind her, and it's pretty easy to see why. She's going to be a big star, and I think Billie Kay and Peyton Royce will be pretty big as well. So 4 women that could really have used a boost like this, at least a short-term push to get into a marquee match like this. None of them get in. Instead, you go with some established people like Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and Naomi. Nothing against any of them, especially a Naomi and a Becky Lynch. This match will really probably get them back on the right track, because they've been looking for something to do. Pretty much a lack of storyline over the last couple months for those 2. Charlotte, I don't think, needs to be in a match like this. She's already been multi-time champion. She is probably the biggest woman in terms of popularity, in terms of her standing in the company, in the entire WWE. So throwing her in a match like this, she doesn't need to win Money in the Bank. She can really challenge for the title at any time without this contract. I would have preferred to see maybe her on the outside doing something else. And Lana, she's not credible in the ring. I don't get the reason that you throw her in here. She has no real chance to win, or I certainly hope she doesn't. Whereas someone like a Sonya Deville or a Mandy Rose, or again a Peyton Royce or Billie Kay, at least maybe a small glimmer of hope that they would have found a way to win the match. So I think a mistake with having Lana get into the match, but we'll see how it turns out. Maybe Lana will be a nice little piece towards a terrific women's Money in the Bank ladder match in a couple weeks. We'll have to wait and see. As far as the qualifying on the men's side, there's still one spot that remains on SmackDown. This past week was supposed to determine that final spot, as Samoa Joe and Big Cass in a heel versus heel matchup was on the slate. That fell through because of an injury to Big Cass. Seems to be a work in terms of that injury, playing off the storyline in which Daniel Bryan sort of took out the knee. Lower body injury for Big Cass, if you will, and he was selling it on the tour. So I hope that is not a legitimate injury. The indication now is that it's probably more so for storyline purposes, but we'll have to wait and see. Nonetheless, Big Cass out of contention and out of the qualifying match. So they give a second chance opportunity as Daniel Bryan and Jeff Hardy squared off in a highly anticipated match. The winner of that one went on and will now face Samoa Joe next week to determine the final qualifying spot, and it was a pretty good match. I don't know that it lived up maybe to the anticipation, at least for me, between Jeff Hardy and Daniel Bryan main eventing SmackDown this past week, but solid action between those two. And I think, again, Daniel Bryan has just given such a boost to SmackDown since his return at WrestleMania after a lengthy absence. Jeff Hardy has also turned in some nice performances. I go back to his initial qualifying match against The Miz. I thought that was just shy of a masterpiece on SmackDown, in which The Miz ultimately won to get his spot in. Jeff Hardy comes up short second time around as well, as Daniel Bryan secured his spot. Remember, it was Rusev who defeated Daniel Bryan the first time. So that's why these two got their second chances. So now Daniel Bryan moves on. He gets the victory against Jeff Hardy, courtesy of the submission. And now it sets up a big-time match this upcoming Tuesday on SmackDown. Samoa Joe and Daniel Bryan. This is a match that has never been seen in WWE. And for people who have followed the careers of Samoa Joe and Daniel Bryan dating back over a decade, they are looking forward to this one. First time ever on WWE TV. Not the first time that these two have ever met, but man, this should be a fun match. The only complaint that I have is this one they're giving away on TV for free. Now, if you listen to the trending topics, the first segment of this week's installment, I talked about the big TV deal for SmackDown, the one that will be upcoming for Raw, and maybe what it means to increasing the significance of the weekly television shows, putting some maybe more marquee matches and pay-per-view caliber matches on weekly TV, maybe some title matches as well. Certainly feels like this it constitutes that. This is a big-time match, a match that certainly could have been one of the main events, if not outright headlined an upcoming pay-per-view between Samoa Joe and Daniel Bryan. Nonetheless, we're going to get it at least the first time around this upcoming week on SmackDown, with the winner getting in the Money in the Bank ladder match, taking the final spot in that match as well. So there is certainly a significance to this feud between Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe, or at least this one match that could turn into a feud, and I think a lot of people hoping that it will. So we'll see if they go with the Daniel Bryan direction, seemingly making him overcome a lot of obstacles and setbacks. That's really been the story of his career in the WWE, or if it's the dominant Samoa Joe. He came up short against Roman Reigns. This is a guy that could really benefit from winning a match like this, getting in to the Money in the Bank. And I think if Samoa Joe does get into the Money in the Bank match, he could be a real front runner for that opportunity to carry around the briefcase. I think Samoa Joe is a guy that is ready to be a champion here on the main roster. He was a champion in NXT. He's been a champion all around the world. If he can stay healthy, which he's been banged up a little bit in his main roster run, but he is a guy, when you combine his popularity, his presence, his in-ring work, and his promos have been terrific, including cutting one on Daniel Bryan after Bryan won his match against Jeff Hardy. I think Samoa Joe has everything you need in a world champion. So to me, he's a guy that probably needs to be in this Money in the Bank match, and really I think could win the Money in the Bank match. But if not, what do you do with Daniel Bryan if Samoa Joe does get in? Do you set up the continuation of his feud with Big Cass? Of course, Big Cass's health, real or feigned, certainly could play a role in that. But that's probably my prediction. Daniel Bryan does not win the match, and I think Big Cass plays a big role in Samoa Joe getting the victory. Joe goes on to be in the Money in the Bank ladder match, and then you have the rematch between Big Cass and Daniel Bryan following up on their Backlash match in which Daniel Bryan prevailed. So that was really the things that stood out from SmackDown Live. Again, Lana getting in, not a decision I agree with, but looking at the reaction, I think most fans seemingly okay with it, just to continue to ride that wave of momentum that she and Aiden English and Rusev have been on recently. Naomi getting in, that one I think most people would say that's a good decision, although at the expense of Sonya Deville, would like to see her and Mandy maybe get a little bit more of a successful run here on SmackDown, as they've been losing a lot of matches in the early going. And then, of course, the big match between Daniel Bryan and Jeff Hardy. Good match, probably not a great match. I think those two could do better if they have another opportunity at it, but it's still a good main event, one that a lot of people, I'm sure, tuned into. And now the big matchup coming this next week, just 2 days away, as I record this here on Sunday afternoon, between Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe to determine the final qualifying spot for the men's Money in the Bank show. One thing to keep an eye on, with the contract being signed with Fox for $1 billion over 5 years for SmackDown. No, it doesn't go in effect right away. It'll be about a year or so time, 2019, for when it actually starts. But will we see a renewed focus and maybe just an improved product on television, especially on the SmackDown side, as I'm sure WWE would love to continue this momentum that they've built with the headlines garnered from this big sale and stock going up. So I'm sure they would love to keep SmackDown rolling. A lot of eyes are on it now, now that we know that it is the future billion-dollar show, and maybe could be challenging to become the show in terms of WWE, depending on what happens with Raw and with its next contract. So I think that SmackDown's going to continue to try to really boost up their big matches on live TV. Maybe the pay-per-views, I don't want to say go in the back burner, but maybe you get a little bit more in terms of pay-per-view quality matches that take place each and every week on SmackDown. And certainly that is the case with Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe upcoming. That's going to do it for the SmackDown summary here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Of course, you could check out not only this episode, but all the previous episodes on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and like that and check out all the old videos. And again, from this installment this week here, I also have the Raw recap as well as the trending topics, in which we talked about the sale of SmackDown, the 5-year contract to Fox for $1 billion, how that might change the landscape in WWE. But that's going to do it. Once again, Sean Meyers, your host, signing off. Thank you for tuning in to the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Have a great Memorial Day holiday, and we'll hope to see you again next week. All right, have a good one.